Guitar Solo Countdown.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Jimmy Wolf's Guitar Solo Countdown. We've got a 1987 pop mammoth battle here. We got INXS Kick and George Michael Faith. Enormous sellers, way beyond Diamond. So I'm going to throw it to Jeff. Why don't you take it from here?
Sir, we need to begin this by inquiring as to the sales figures of both these behemoths.
Yeah, behemoth. You know what? And I'm a little guilty that we didn't address these albums more in the 1987 episode that we did.
This is true.
I feel like we overlooked these records because they're pretty incredible.
I believe you're correct, sir.
All right, let me just check here. Let me see what the albums say. I think the George Michael one is more.
I believe so as well.
Yes.
I think by a significant amount, actually.
Yes, I think you're right. Let's see here. Worldwide, 20 million.
Jesus. Nobody would be upset with the sales of Kick, though, you know.
Yeah, INXS Kick. Yeah, so the Faith record basically put George Michael on par with Michael Jackson as the king of pop at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't think of anyone who would be bigger than George Michael in 1987.
I would think maybe the only people that were in that level, that stratospheric level of fame would be maybe Madonna.
Yes.
Maybe Prince, maybe U2. But yeah, you know, it's Michael Jackson. Maybe Bruce Springsteen.
Yep.
But you know what? Like, there's a handful, really, of people, of artists that were that famous and had an album that was that huge and impactful on pop culture as a whole. But,
yep. Now INXS is saying 20 million worldwide as well.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think they're pretty evenly matched records, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that. I would have thought INXS would have been less, like maybe 15, but
yeah, I think INXS was more popular worldwide, perhaps, whereas I think the majority of George Michael's sales were probably in America. That's my guess. Let me see.
Yeah, I don't think INXS sold a lot in the UK. They said that they never really experienced much. Britain was the last place for them to really crack, whereas Kick hit in the States, but didn't really hit in England. And it was X that was their big album in England. So,
yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, they're both incredible. They're both hugely influential. So yeah, no, this is a good one. This is going to be interesting.
Two incredibly handsome lead singers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Almost mesmerizing in front of a camera. Like, talk about handsome fellas.
Yeah, like George Michael's almost so handsome, like it's almost inhuman. Like it's like a Ken doll or something. some kind of AI algorithm or something, yeah.
And you know, what I truly remember most about these two records, and to be honest, those two frontmen, the video for Faith when he's rocking in that leather jacket with the dangly cross earring and the sunglasses, like no man looked cooler.
Yeah.
And funny, I used to think, man, he must get all the chicks.
Oh yeah.
But lo and behold, and also the video for Never Tear Us Apart, where Michael, it's almost the opposite of Faith. I mean, it's filmed in Prague. The band, Michael Hutchence is just kind of on his own. It's kind of just, they film them walking around in the city, and it's kind of maybe a little lonely looking. Michael Hutchence just by himself, not really belting it out or prancing around like George Michael, but I also remember how strikingly not even just how handsome it was, but how it was an equally powerful image to me, that video and of that band and just him walking around that beautiful city. And so two kind of the dichotomies between those two, one kind of a jangly rocker, the other a very introspective song. Anyways, all right, brass tacks, here we go.
All right.
So before I give my verdict, I'd have to say, geez, both these albums have amongst the greatest hits of these artists on there for sure. I mean, George, obviously Fate, you know, I mean, you could say Wake Me Up, but if you want to get into the Wham stuff, Father Figure is an absolutely beautiful song.
Oh yeah.
To me, it's George Michael's most perfect song. I mean, it's just incredibly well written. It's sensitive. It takes on a little bit more of a different meaning now as an adult and after he's been out of the closet than it did when he was in '87. And how I viewed him back then. Sorry to interrupt.
No. I'm interrupting you. I just want to throw this in though. Like I'm getting a Princey thing where like there's a lot of religious like overtones on this record mixed with sex. I find that because even like Father Figure, like that can mean so many different things, right?
Yeah.
And faith, I gotta have faith, right? It's like it's kind of I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Well, and also, you know, to further your point, James or Jimmy, I mean, also, I want your sex, right? I mean, he's really talking to the Lord on that one.
Well, maybe not that one, but no, but
sex, I'm not your father. Sex.
No, but you know what I mean. Like the album starts off with an organ, right? Like a church organ, and Father Figure and Faith have the religious overtones, but not really. It's almost like Prince
Those
is
are
more.
Also the songs that start the album off as well, right?
Yeah.
So George Michael described Faith as his attempt to destroy the image that people had of him in Wham as that, you know, the teeny bopper singer, the boy toy. He wanted to really establish himself as a true artist, and like to be taken seriously as a songwriter. Very much hit the mark on that. I mean, nobody was talking shit about George Michael after this album. Some very mature songwriting, hand to mouth, very beautiful. Monkey, although, you know, maybe more for the dance floor, certainly a bit more of a sophisticated look at addiction, maybe. I Want Your Sex isn't holding anything back, really.
That's
come on!
Yeah.
And Kissing a Fool, I mean, he almost gets into Frank Sinatra, Harry Connick Jr. territory there. But I mean, Mike, like if there's anybody too that had the chops to do it, I mean, George Michael was one of the finest voices of his generation. And personally, I find that these two guys are the best voices. I mean, I guess you can make other, you could say Bono, you could say Daryl Hall. There's, I guess, some other good singers from the 80s, but man, these are my personal two favorites.
Yep.
Then we go to Kick. I mean, New Sensation, Devil Inside, Need You Tonight, Never Tear Us Apart, Mystify, Guns in the Sky. Like, there's not even a chamber in this gun without a bullet in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how many hits are on this thing.
Look at that handsome devil right there. Look at him just looking over coyly. Like I'm too handsome to take a picture of me.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So my verdict, as much this was a tough battle for sure. But my verdict is that Kick is the better album, and I'll tell you why. Kick really holds up. It holds up now. I mean, those, not that Faith was not as sophisticated or as grown up, but the themes that they dealt with on Kick are maybe a little more subtle and a little more, like, I can remember when I was a kid, I remember hearing Need You Tonight. Well, I can remember hearing Father Figure and Need You Tonight and knowing that both those songs were about something that I'm too young to understand yet. Mm-hmm. Although I liked both those songs, Need You Tonight is about lust. It's got a sexy groove to it. It is sexy. And when I didn't know about sex, I could detect it. I just couldn't put I couldn't put a description to it. And Father Figure was about intimacy, and I also couldn't put my finger on that either. But truth be told, I just find Kick holds up better. It's more streamlined to me. Although it's got a bit of, it's kind of keyboardy, but there's a lot of guitars too. Like it's the penultimate INXS sound. It's them at their absolute best. Whereas George Michael is just now getting into this new territory. This is INXS perfecting their sound, and George Michael is entering into the sonic territory that he wants to now inhabit. And this album is extremely well executed. Sounds like they really worked their balls off on it. There is not a single dud on Kick. Tiny Daggers would, if I had to pick one that I'm the least, that would be my least favorite, it would be that one. But also, I have every single 12-inch single from this album, and the B-sides off of it are incredible as well. Like, they didn't have to relegate those to just the 12 inches. They could have been on here too, and they would have been awesome. So Faith to me is as great as it is. It's just, you know, how they play with the vocals. Sex is natural, sex is good. Not everybody does it, but everybody should. Sex is best when it's one-on-one. And like
a little dated, maybe.
It's that effect, like where you could record a voice into a sampler or a keyboard and just hit the key and monkey, monkey, and that was the big thing then. And George Michael was all over it.
Yeah.
But like, it sounds very 87 to me.
Yeah.
And you know, for every bit of sophistication, I find like some of those songs can be a little bit pandering, or like, I Want Your Sex doesn't really hold up well. It's too like, just in your face. Whereas I Need You Tonight is subtle, and I think they're both going after the same thing with those songs. Just INXS execute it to perfection. It's got a slinky, sexy groove to it that makes you want to grind against a beautiful woman. And I Want Your Sex, you know, it's got a boppy 80s bump, 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 bump. It doesn't make me want to, I mean, I can feel the groove of it. I can't really immerse myself in it. I mean, I thought it was pretty outlandish when I was 10, you know, or 9 or whenever it came out. But like, oh my God, he's talking about sex. But now that I'm older, it lives in there, and it doesn't have the resonance. I Need You Tonight is still sexy right now. And I mean, you got Faith, fantastic, a radio staple. And Faith will never, ever be off the radio airwaves. Father Figure, they play a little less. And you sometimes hear Kissing a Fool on the radio. But, I mean, New Sensation, Devil Inside, Need You Tonight, Never Tear Us Apart, and even to a lesser extent, Guns in the Sky, and Kick. They play all those songs on pop radio still to this day very heavily, and more so than any other INXS song. Maybe What You Need, maybe Suicide Blonde, and, you know, if you're going to get into the 90s, maybe Elegantly Wasted, but
yeah,
this is the clear-cut winner for me. Both are phenomenal albums, and I still love them both. I have very fond memories. I had both these albums when they came out.
Nice.
But, you know, Kick is the winner for me, and I'm a bit saddened that I'll never get to see INXS live. It's a regret of mine. It's a shame because they were they were fantastic. Certainly their golden age is the Kick era.
Yeah.
But we also got to give a rest in peace to George Michael, who incidentally died Christmas Day.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. Just a few years ago. I think he died 2016. Was it not?
Yep.
But yeah, rest in peace to both those fantastic frontmen. If I had to put my finger on who was the better singer, I don't think I could. I truly love them both for different reasons.
Yeah.
But they both have such powerful vocal presences, and they both understood. They could both belt it out whenever necessary. They could also, they were subtle, like they knew when less is more as well. They could follow somebody else's lead. Sometimes they let the groove of the track take over. It's not all about them all the time. And, you know, a lot of people accuse George Michael of being a bit of an egomaniac, but, you know, George knew when to ride the beat and when to let the music do the talking and when to pull back a little, which is something that not a lot of singers of that era do well. They wanted the fame and they wanted the spotlight and they wanted everyone to fucking listen to them, regardless of whether it could have been done more subtly. So, kick, come home!
1-on-1.
You know, James, sex is natural. Sex is good. Not everybody does it, but everybody should.
It's over the top. I mean, it's too direct. It's odd. Yeah, I have trouble getting into that one just lyrically. I mean, it's a great groove, obviously, but yeah, it's.
I also remember, James, in terms of a context, as a precursor to Fate, Beverly Hills Cop came out in '87, and I Want Your Sex was the first song technically it wasn't the first song of his solo career because Careless Whisper was actually George Michael featuring Wham, but it was really just George Michael. And then he did a song called like One More Try, I think, which was it One More Try? Or something like, no, it's not One More Try. It was something different. But he had a single release before Faith that was not terribly successful, and he did a song with Aretha Franklin. But I Want Your Sex was the first taste of Faith, the album, and it was on the Beverly Hills soundtrack. And they played it in the movie when Axel Foley and the two detectives go to a strip club. And in the music in the back of the Peelers, there's titties and there's George wanting everybody's sex, which that is a very powerful image to me too. Like they went to a strip club and George Michael's playing in this seedy environment. And anyway, I remember that very, very clearly.
And the song playing in the sex club scene or the strip club scene in part 1 was Nasty Girl by Vanity 6.
Ooh.
Who Prince produced, actually. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, you gotta have those like strip bar scenes, eh? All right, sounds good, Jeff. Okay, I'll jump in here. So okay, I'll hold back my favorites just to kind of build it up a bit. Uh, so Faith was an album that I had as a kid. My parents had it. It was in the house pretty much my whole life. So I'm very familiar with Faith. I also had the Beverly Hills Cop 2 soundtrack. So, especially I Want Your Sex. I've heard that song so many times. I was surprised to learn that George Michael produced, arranged, and wrote everything on this record. So this is like he's being Princey here, where he's basically doing the whole thing himself, which is
he basically signed with the record label. How he chose his label, he wanted complete control. It was a massive bidding war to sign him, but most people were going to give him 90% of what he wanted, and he wanted 100% of what he wanted, and that was 100% complete autonomy over the release of his first album. And Clive Davis, I think, was the man behind Faith. Was the record label owner of, it says this is CBS Records. Yeah, this is Canada, though. I don't know what label it was on in the States, but
okay.
Anyways, he got exactly what he wanted, and
Columbia or Epic. Yeah.
Was Clive Davis behind it? Was I correct about that?
I don't know. I think Clive Davis probably was. Yeah, I'm gonna say yes. But that's good. That's a good question. Yeah, like I think because he had all that the previous success with Wham, that's when labels give you the creative control, is when you've proven your success. So yeah, I mean but the funny thing was that even though he and you mentioned this, like even though he produced and did everything himself, the album feels super mature. And I think he was only like 20, maybe 24 or 25 when he did this. So he's I just assumed that it was a bunch of older writers that were helping him out, that were given to him by the label. So that's cool that it has this extremely mature feeling to it. But I agree with it too, that it does feel a little dated. Yeah, it's like I Want Your Sex and like the Monkey song. I mean, it grooves, but it, a little cheesy, right? Like a little bit, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the monkey noises in the background.
Yeah, I know. Like sample the monkey. Yeah. And one more, is it Hard Day? I think Hard Day kind of has that kind of sample thing, which it works, right? Like I'm not really shitting on it, but yeah, it just hasn't. It just kind of sticks out a little bit as being a little too like a little dated.
Let's not mince words, Jimmy. They're showing some wrinkles, those tunes.
They are. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. The one tune that is not showing any wrinkles, though, and I think it's probably my favorite song of both records, is Faith. I mean, Faith is a timeless, dateless song. I mean, like that song could be released now and it would be trendy. So yeah, that song I would say is the one song that is no wrinkles, hasn't aged a bit.
Blemish free.
Absolutely blemish free. Yeah. Yeah. And okay, so INXS, like INXS, it's almost like when I put this album on, I don't even really analyze it. I'm already a few beers in, I'm just grooving to it. Like it just hits you. I agree. I feel you tonight. Like sexiest guitar and bass groove ever. Guns in the Sky is such a great rocker, right? It's like great way to open a record. New Sensation. Like I just love the guitar grooves. It's like this
real shimmery.
Yeah, it's like
a
funk rock guitar thing. Yeah, like they've nailed that. Of course, just like Michael Hutchence just has that thing. And what I love about INXS too is that it's a band, right? Like that's the main difference between these two records is George Michael is a lone wolf here. Like really, like he's by himself, which is impressive. But INXS is a band. It's like it's like a 6-piece band that's firing on all cylinders, right? So like there is this chemistry that just is so, I don't know. It just, for me, the drums groove on this more because it's a real drummer, you know. There's just more of a camaraderie band feel on this album. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Kick. Yeah,
nice. INXS had been together since '79, or I think 78 is when they got together in Australia.
Mhm.
1980, I believe, was their first album. They had, I mean, they were putting out an album a year, I think, in the beginning, maybe only in Australia. And then once they got a hit stateside, I think the rest of the albums were released here. But like, you know, Listen Like Thieves was the first one I knew about. Shabu, I believe, is one of them too, that had some Original Sin, maybe. So, you know, they had an upward trajectory from the beginning of their career. But yeah, it's like you said, they were building,
yeah,
from the beginning. And you know, it's a bit, this is, I don't like really saying things like this because it makes me sound like an old man, but back in the day, you would get a record deal and you, like, they would believe in you and you would make an album and then you would tour it, and hopefully you would break even, and then the next one, but you get to make another record, but hopefully the fans that you played to on your first tour would come back and see you and buy the next record. So that's how you built up your fan base. And that's how all the great bands of, you know, of my era, or the bands that I really truly love,
mm-hmm.
how they got their fame. It was through hard fucking touring, like U2, like Depeche Mode, like INXS, like George Michael, to a degree. I mean, it was writing a good song, Top of the Pops, and boom, worldwide fame. I'm not going to say he didn't work for it, because they did. You know, they had to eat some shit and they signed some bad contracts and this and that. But, you know, there was no 4 or 5 years of hard slugging before they made their big break. George Michael made it big pretty quick. And that's not to say that his celebrity or fame is not justifiable, or it's not worthwhile, or that he is somehow less talented because he didn't earn it. That's all bullshit. But there really is a chemistry with these boys. They, two of them are brothers and one of them's a cousin or something out of the 6 of them,
yeah,
or something like that. Another thing I truly love about Kick is that saxophone, man. Oh, yeah. There are some kind of cheesy saxophone moments in the 80s, but this is rock and roll saxophone, man. And it just works. I mean, they have a permanent sax member in their group. And it works. It's not like they just bring Jimmy out, you know, for once in a blue. He has a permanent place in the band and he plays sax, and it works. So this album really, really, truly goes the distance. It holds up. Not so much the fashion, like that striped shirt that this fine gentleman has on. That does not really hold up well.
Yeah.
Sure. This denim jacket here really doesn't hold up, as opposed to George Michael's denim jacket, which does still look cool. But, you know, we really couldn't have picked two bigger powerhouse records that really have a lot to compare, a lot of similarities, but quite a few differences as well. Like this might have been the best comparison I think we've ever truly done in terms of how close knit we got to.
Yeah, this is a good one. Yep.
Truly tremendous albums.
Okay. So the 3 Ferris brothers, they're actually all brothers. So there's 3 brothers in INXS. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's like the Beach Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got the triple brother thing. Yeah, that's cool.
Also, after in the 90s, Michael Hutchence had some issues, and Michael Hutchence, I think between 1990 and before he died, he was recording a solo album, and he'd kind of do a little bit whenever he had the time. INXS still were pretty heavy into touring in those days. They never really let off or let up, whereas George Michael took a good 7 years off between, Listen Without Prejudice and Older. I think there was a 7-year gap where INXS, I think, had 3 or 4 albums in that time. And so anyways, but the whole point of this is Michael Hutchence made a solo album, and it came out after he died in the year 2000, and it was not very good. And, it shows that a premier talent like Michael Hutchence, he needed, everybody thinks, oh, I'm just going to go solo now, or have a go by myself. Just stick with what, he needs his brothers, man. And they're greater than the sum of their parts. There is a synergy here in these 6 members that is just fantastic. George Michael didn't need any of that shit. He sure didn't need Andrew Ridgeley, but those boys needed each other, and they made magic. And sometimes, I truly do appreciate magic, synergy between artists. And again, all my favorite bands have it. U2, Oasis, INXS.
Yeah. Now you could also say the similarities between these 2 records is that they were both the band's peaks.
Most definitely.
Yeah. They band George Michael, like both artists' peak records. Yeah. Cool, Jeff. Yeah, that was a good one. That was
a fantastic one.
Jimmy Wolf's Guitar Solo Countdown.